Hello, welcome to the Kyuquot First Nations Community Wildfire Protection Plan. This is a video presentation that is supplementary to a formal report submitted to the Strathcona Regional District in the Kyuquot First Nation. The full report and maps can be downloaded from the SRD website for further reference. My name is Colin Philliter. I'm a professional forester that helped write this report, along with my colleague Cynthia Liu, who is also a professional forester. In this video, we'll be covering some background information on the Kyuquot community, looking at the local wildfire threat, the local wildfire risk, discussing the Fire Smart program, and reviewing 26 recommendations that were made within the report. Kyuquot is a remote community on the west coast on the Kyuquot Sound, only accessible by water, as no roads run into the community. There are around 180 people who live in the community year-round, as well as an increased summer population with nearby tourism attraction on Walter Island. The CWPP area of interest is a 2-kilometer area around the Kyuquot community, shown on the yellow line on this map. This is known as the Wildland Urban Interface. The majority of the island around Kyuquot is within their treaty land. While Walters Island is within the 2-kilometer AOI, it is not incorporated within the CWPP. It is included in the CWPP for Electoral Area A for the Strathcona Regional District. Important infrastructure within Kyuquot include the band office, the health clinic, the community center, and a school. As part of this CWPP, we conducted a local wildfire threat assessment that was developed by BC Wildfire. This assessment is based on a spatial GIS analysis using mapping programs and a number of different factors. The fuel type around the community has a large impact on the threat score. Fuel type influences the head fire intensity, which is the energy or heat intensity of a fire. The spotting impact, which is the ability for a wildfire to spread, also has an impact on the score. Wildfire threat is also based on historically recorded fire density of an area, which includes both human-caused fires as well as lightning-caused fires. Based on the spatial analysis we conducted, the AOI around Kyuquot was mostly moderate. As you can see on the map there, the yellow area is the moderate threat, and it comprises 93% of the area. No recent wildfires have occurred around the AOI. After we calculated the threat score, the next step was to conduct a local wildfire risk classification. Again, this calculation is conducted by parameters developed by BC Wildfire and done with GIS using local factors to determine the risk. The risk class is based on the wildfire threat that we just discussed, proximity of the community to the threat, fire spread patterns by localized wind, as well as slope. It should be noted that proximity has a significant impact on the risk. Fuels within 100 meters of the community that have the same fuel type are often a higher risk because they are so close to the community than a similar fuel type that might be 500 or 1,000 meters from the community. The AOI around Kyuquot was mostly low, as you can see on the map in green. However, there were some areas of moderate, which are shown in the yellow. On this map, the red outline shows the area which is known as the Wildland Urban Interface 100, or the WUI 100. This is the closest 100 meters surrounding most of the clusters of the structures in the community. Treatment recommendations for fuel came from this assessment, something we will be discussing later on in the video. A common discussion point in this video is around Fire Smart, which is a national initiative to provide communities, property owners, and residents the tools to assess the fire hazard around their homes and provides them with strategies to start reducing those hazards. Fire Smart is a shared responsibility involving all levels of government, involves participation from the private sector and community leaders. The photo here shows a neighborhood in Fort McMurray after the 2016 wildfire that impacted that community. Some homes burned, while others did not. Fire smarting of these homes may have played a factor. Embers or sparks can cause a significant proportion of structure ignitions. Fire Smart assessments are done to assess both public and private property to determine what can be done to make these structures and property more resistant to fire. A key aspect of the Fire Smart program is the structural ignition zone, which is comprised of 4 different priority zones. Fire Smart has each zone assessed separately, and there is a judging criteria based on zone proximity, vegetation, and structural building materials, as well as the design of those structures. A Fire Smart community hazard assessment was done in 2019 by a qualified individual from the First Nations Emergency social services. This assessment will be referenced later in the recommendations. To see that full assessment, please refer to Appendix 4 within the CWPP document. This CWPP makes a total of 26 recommendations. We will start by highlighting the 15 highest priority recommendations and at greater detail. Later in the video, we'll have a look at the medium and lower priority items. Recommendations were prioritized based on numerous factors, and importance was given to them that should involve reducing the likelihood of wildfire spreading into the community, reducing impacts to critical infrastructure and property, and reducing the negative economic and social impacts to the community caused by wildfire. The community of Kyuquot recently had a Fire Smart Community Hazard Assessment. This offered multiple recommendations to Fire Smart community. To begin work on clearing priority zones 1A and 1, a local Fire Smart board should be created, and work should start on clearing these zones around community use structures. Additionally, residents should be encouraged to do the clearing around their own homes. To educate the community about Fire Smart, a local representative can deliver Fire Smart awareness presentation, as well as help train a Fire Smart community champion. It is essential to find local Fire Smart champions who will help lead the charge on localized community initiatives. This is a volunteer role, but it's usually a Fire Smart champion that is the key to getting organized and implementing Fire Smart within a community. Recommendation 7 suggests having the full community wildfire protection plan and maps available on the SRD website for the public to view. This video could also be uploaded. Recommendation 8 looks at getting more community involvement by having people who use social media become aware of Fire Smart as well as fire bans. The Kyuquot Band should regularly promote wildfire content on their social media pages, especially leading up to the fire season for heightened citizen awareness. For community members that don't use social media, other methods can include physical distribution of flyers and pamphlets. Increased fire awareness can be done through organizing a Community Fire Safety Day that is a regular community event. This day should focus on anything and everything fire-related. Activities in the Community Fire Safety Day can include the practice and use of fire tools, fire hydrants, and fire extinguishers. That safety day could also provide an opportunity for residents to check for smoke alarms and fire extinguishers within their homes to ensure that they are A, present, and B, still working. As Kyuquot has a fire response procedure written into their emergency plan, it is recommended to develop a regular practice schedule for fire response procedures. This is another event that can be done on the Community Fire Safety Day, which can improve community readiness to response to a structure or a wildfire within the community. The SRD should arrange annual meetings before every fire season with all stakeholders, including the British Columbia Wildfire Service, Emergency Management BC, and the Kyuquot Emergency Coordinator to review emergency procedures, communication strategies, and support services. Having regular communication between these groups strengthens relationships and will ensure everyone is better prepared should a wildfire occur. To enter Kyuquot, most community members and tourists come by boat from Fair Harbor. Installing a fire danger sign there would draw attention to the current fire danger, as well as advise when fire bans are in effect. This would educate both local residents as well as visitors to the community. As Kyuquot does not have a formal fire department, Recommendation 13 looks at conducting a complete inventory of firefighting tools that are within the community. This includes hand tools, fire extinguishers, water pumps, hoses, and fittings. After they have established this inventory, they can determine what fire suppression equipment they acquire and begin to work towards acquiring it. In extreme wildfire scenarios that threaten the community, evacuation may be advised or even required. Kyuquot should ensure that they have the physical resources required to be able to evacuate all community members. After they've done an inventory, and if they find they are lacking any resources, they can go about procuring those resources. To engage the community in local wildfire response planning and document what local skills and resources are available, Kyuquot needs to understand what the current skill sets of the community members are. They can then develop a training program and plan to ensure that they have improved capacity in that wildfire response. We'll now examine 8 medium priority recommendations in the CWPP. In BC, around 40% of the wildfires are human caused, and Kyuquot officials mentioned their potential interest in having above and beyond BC wildfire restrictions. Recommendation 16 recommends developing local policies that restrict the use of backyard fires, fireworks, lanterns, or other spark-causing devices. This should be implemented during high fire danger on their treaty lands, which may reduce human-caused ignitions. Another key element of FireSmart is the flammability of building materials used in structures. Kyuquot leaders discussed the possibility of renovations and expansions within the community. We recommend they consult the FireSmart Home Development Guide for choosing building materials that are less flammable. The BC Wildfire Service is open to collaboration and increased communication with local communities. This should be pursued by Kyuquot to establish a working relationship, including the possibility of having a local fire warden through BC Wildfire Service's Fire Warden Program. As mentioned earlier, the local wildfire risk assessment shows moderate risk within 500 meters of the community. 2 areas were identified as potential fuel treatments. They should be investigated further by a qualified registered professional for the development of a site-specific fuel management prescription to reduce the threat and risk of wildfire in these areas. Due to the very remote location of Kyuquot, they should establish a volunteer fire department to respond to both structural fires as well as localized wildfires. The First Nations Emergency Services Society has many training programs available, and it even has broken into 3 tiers and timelines to implement this training. Tier 1 includes home fire protection, Tier 2 is community fire protection, while Tier 3 is establishing a fire department. Kyuquot should strive to implement all 3 tiers with the eventual goal of having a volunteer fire department. Part of that necessary training includes the S100 and S185 courses for their wildfire firefighters. We'll now examine 3 lower priority recommendations in the CWPP. Kyuquot has developed a local emergency evacuation plan. They should now develop an emergency preparedness communication plan to have a method to communicate the contents and evacuation plans. This includes wildfire, as well as other natural events like tsunami, earthquake, and landslides. BC Wildfire Service requires safe landing zones for their helicopters and has expressed concern about landing in areas without designated pads. While Kyuquot has designated an area by their community center, which this now needs to be clearly visible from the air and regular maintenance performed. This includes keeping it clear of brush and hazards. Another backup pad location could be by the school. Both these locations should be known to the BC Wildfire Service and marked on emergency preparedness plans. Recommendation 25 looks at reducing the likelihood of structure fires from wildfire embers. This can be done by purchasing sprinkler kits to set up around homes on top of roofs. This is a relatively low-cost method for extreme wildfire scenarios when structures are at risk. To conclude this video, we'll summarize what we've discussed so far. Based on our local wildfire threat mapping, Kyuquot is surrounded by moderate wildfire threat. For the risk, most of the community is at low or moderate risk. 2 potential treatment areas were identified as areas that could have fuel management activities completed to reduce the risk. This will require further investigation by a qualified professional. Many of our recommendations centered around FireSmart, including conducting assessments and completing FireSmart fuel management around zones 1A and 1. Continuing community awareness and education is also essential. Kyuquot should continue to improve their emergency preparedness by keeping members of the community informed of emergency procedures, as well as training community members and eventually forming a volunteer fire department. We'd like to thank the following individuals for sharing their time with us through meetings, phone calls, field reviews, and information and data sharing. Sean Koopman from the SRD for his vision and encouragement throughout the project. We'd also like to thank Elizabeth Jack and Steiner Vague from the Kyuquot First Nations. Your guys' ideas, insights, and feedback help shape the CWPP. For further information, please refer to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan document on the SRD website, which includes more detailed information, links to references and guidelines, and georeference maps. Thank you for listening.